service of the Philippians. Now, what was lacking in the service of the Philippians? Listen to this commentator, Marvin Vincent. I think he gets it exactly right. He says, the gift to Paul was a gift of the church as a body. It was a sacrificial offering of love. What was lacking was the church's presentation of this offering in person. This was impossible, and Paul represents Epaphroditus as supplying this lack by his affectionate and zealous ministry. I think that's exactly what Colossians 1:24 means. Let me say it like this. When Paul says, I rejoice in my sufferings for you, and I fill up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ, the afflictions of Christ, in my body, in my flesh, he means Christ died for millions of people all over the world, people on your campus, people in the unreached peoples of the world. Their debt has been paid, and they don't know it. They can't taste it. They can't feel it. They can't sing that song. I thank you for the cross, my friend. I thank you for the cross. There's something missing in this suffering. It's not showing up. It's not showing up in 639 unreached people groups, over 100,000 in population, that have zero testimony from the people in this room or me. It's not connecting. There's something lacking in the sufferings, namely the presentation of the sufferings. Now here's the amazing thing. You might say, well, obviously the gospel has to be spread. It's not obvious what he's saying here. He's not saying simply the gospel has to be spread. He is saying it is through my body and my sufferings that the sufferings of Christ arrive in the unreached peoples of the world, on your campus. How do the sufferings of Jesus arrive on your campus? They arrive through your sufferings. That's the meaning of Colossians 1:24. I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ in my own flesh. It's an amazing statement. And just think about the history of missions for a moment. If you have any inkling of how we got to where we are today with 1.3 or 4 billion people professing faith in Jesus Christ when it started from 12, how did we get there? You know what the answer is? Suffering. There never has been a breakthrough into an unreached place or people without suffering. If you're going to be a missionary, mark it down. Pain, loss of a child, malaria, marital strife, tensions on the team, demonic opposition, martyrdom. It's going to come. Don't think it's strange when it comes. It's the price. He paid his life for our salvation. We join him in that suffering to display the nature of it. How are they going to see how satisfying he is in us if we look like it's the computer toy that is really satisfying? It is wonderful, I think, that Paul in this verse says, now I rejoice in the sufferings for your sake. I'm not summoning you to a miserable life. I am summoning you to a painful life. But in this pain, all over the Bible, you find Christians rejoicing in tribulation. Rejoice in tribulation. For tribulation works patience, and patience works approvedness, and approvedness works hope, and hope will not put us to shame, because the love of God is poured out in our heart. You want to experience the deep joy of knowing yourself loved by God? Lay out your life for another person. Take a risk with your body. Take a risk with your mind. Take a risk with your money, your schooling. What an amazing thing God calls us to do and to be. The cross of Christ is for propitiation. Our cross is for propagation. That's a quote from Joseph Tson, another Romanian. Let me close with a few stories to illustrate what I'm talking about. J. Oswald Sanders is dead. He was alive when I heard him in his 89th year at Trinity Seminary in a chapel a few years ago. I think it was early 90s. And he told the story of his travels. I just got to say this. He was an old man, right? 89 is old. And he's preaching, and he's preaching with power. And he said that none of us should ever retire. And that he had written a book a year since he was 70. I just thought that was awesome. 19 books starting at age 70. You want to be an author? You got about 50 years to get ready. And then pour it on at age 70. Oh, America. Don't go to Mexico or New Mexico or Florida. Go to the library. Or use your senior discount to get on a plane and go to Oman. Well, anyway, he told a story, and I want to tell it to you. An indigenous missionary walking barefoot from village to village in India, where he had been. His hardships were many. After a long day of many miles and much discouragement, he came to a certain village, and he tried to speak the gospel there simply before dusk, and they rejected him. Drove him out of town. We don't want to hear you. And exhausted and discouraged, he lay down under a tree and fell asleep. Later in the evening, he suddenly was awakened, and the village was all around him. And the main man was over him, and though he was startled, the headman said, "We came out to see what kind of man you were, and when we saw your blistered feet, we felt bad for what we had done and concluded you must be a holy man with a very important message for us, and we are here to let you speak to us." And Oswald Sanders made the point that these feet, these beautiful feet, how beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who bring good tidings, that these feet, blistered, said, "I have a message worth hearing." I think that is a perfect picture of I complete in my body, my sufferings, what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ. Christ can't be there in that village, but we are his body on the earth. And Christ has mainly a suffering to offer the world, and he means for the missionaries to offer themselves to the people. Here's another one. Billy Graham had an itinerant evangelist conference in Amsterdam, I think 1990. A Maasai warrior showed up there who was an evangelist. And Michael Card, who lives here in town, singer, wrote this story up in a magazine that I read. And let me read it to you, because it's even more dramatic